no introduction. But for the benefit of those of us who are online, I would like to say that our guest is a professional telecoms engineer, practiced telecom engineering in the corporate environment, an entrepreneur, and a business management training of over 38 years with international Pan-African experience and local experience here in Nigeria. He is very well known for his role as the Executive Vice Chairman of Nigerian Telecommunication Commission, an agency he anchored and ran from year 2000 rather, and to become a leading and highly respected global regulator throughout the world. He has developed a foundation that his successors are riding on, and today NCC still remains a pride of Africa when it comes to telecoms regulation. Today, based on his pedigree and reach, he was recently appointed and still occupies the office of the chairman of MTN Nigerian Communication PLC. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Dr. Ernest Ndukwe, OFR. Dr. Ndukwe, welcome to this Fireside Chat.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So like I said to you backstage just before we started, it's really a privilege for Africa to hear from you again. You're someone we used to see and hear from a lot when you were a regulator. But now, since you've been taking the role of assisting MTN board, leading the MTN board. Yeah, we know you're doing that for MTN Nigeria, but a lot of people are wondering, what else have you been doing? We know that you're a very busy person, but since you left the public eyes, we're wondering, are you now completely a private person, or are there other public ventures you still spend time to do?
Yes, thank you very much. I have done quite a few things. When I left the NCC, I set up a consulting firm, which I've been running since then. I also tried to venture briefly into politics because I thought that people like me needed to be involved in somehow the governance of this country. But it didn't work out the way I thought. So I went back to the place I'm more accustomed to, which is a professional life and running my consultancy firm. And that has kept me quite busy all these years until I was invited to a number of boards. I used to be on the board of Access Bank for some years, and then, of course, board of Open Media Communications, and a few other smaller companies. There is also some international company called ICT Africa, which is based in South Africa. I'm also still on the board of that. And then very recently appointed to the MTN board. I must say that I refused for many years to get involved in any telco because I decided of my own volition to give myself a long period of absence, and but despite the fact that I was being lobbied by a number of companies to come on board, but telecom is the only area that I know best. And then after about 8-9 years of shall I call it sabbatical or not being involved, I decided now to accept the invitation from MTN to join their board. So that's what I've been doing so far.
Thank you very much. Your story, your journey. Although today we are focusing on 5G and the way forward for Africa, but I would like to extract a commitment from you now. African young people are listening. Everybody's looking at you. We would like to have another session with you, with a lot of young people who would like to hear your story in detail so that you can be an inspiration to them and they can learn, understand your entire journey. And perhaps those who want to be on that journey can then take a thing or two from that. You wouldn't mind for us to organize that?
No, it will be my pleasure. It's
Excellent.
actually a big interest of mine to see to the development of the next generation. So I've done it a few times before, and anything that will motivate young people is always a pleasure for me to do. So please, I'll be available whenever you are.
Excellent, excellent. And on that note, of course, let's now dive deep into your core area of what you know, as you put it. The trending issue now. Today, we are talking about the new normal. COVID-19 has changed the landscape for pretty much everything. The way we live, the way we work, the way we play. Pretty much everything, the way we learn. And one of the biggest technology that is driving what the entire fourth industrial revolution has to offer is 5G. We hear 5G all the time. And there is no better person to ask this question, Dr. Ndukwe. What exactly is 5G?
Okay, thank you very much. Like you said, it is the next big thing in wireless technology space. Every subsequent generation of wireless networks delivers faster speed and more functionalities for a mobile phone. 1G was the first generation devoted to analog voice calls, and then 2G is the digital and has enabled digital and enabled text messaging for the first time. Then we moved on from there to 3G, which enabled online data and internet on mobile. Of course, we moved on to 4G, which enabled over 10 times higher speeds compared to 3G. So as more users come online, it's being speculated that 4G networks are fast approaching their limits with respect to how much capacity and speed that it can handle. So 5G was then developed to meet this challenge. So in summary, 5G is the technology of the 2020s and will be able to handle up to 1,000 times the traffic of today's 4G networks and about 10 to 100 times the speed. So it's actually a very important technology for the future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndukwe. So, if I permit me to paraphrase, 5G, the G, the generation, of course. So, as an average user of a mobile phone, what I hear you say is that in 5G era, I'll be able to download that video 10 to 100 times faster than I currently do.
That's right. That is very right.
That's something to look forward to, isn't it?
It is something very exciting. And many of the new technological developments are actually going to depend on 5G for them to be successful.
Great. So, talking of which, as this development comes, of course, the 5G network itself needs to be available. So, what exactly is the status of 5G implementation in Nigeria, Africa, or the rest of the world? Is it likely that 5G implementation will go in diverse direction like we saw in your early days with CDMA, most of Europe doing GSM, and the US continent deploying CDMA before we saw a convergence? So are we seeing the diversification of opinion or approach in the rollout of 5G locally? I mean, globally, locally and globally.
Okay. You know, there is a big race for 5G today. Countries that want to stay competitive in the global economy are adopting 5G technology at an increasingly rapid pace. Some people who have been current with news would have known that Donald Trump, President Trump, sometime last year declared that 5G is a race the United States of America must win. Over the years, American companies and wireless operating companies have been leading in early development and deployment of wireless communications technology. In fact, it might be interesting to know that the first portable phone was developed in the US. However, other countries seem to be seriously contesting the lead in 5G development. Countries such as Korea, China, and of course the United States are countries that lead the world in building and deploying 5G technology. So, coming home to Africa, Nigeria in particular has tested, we conducted a test for 5G some months ago before the COVID lockdown. And it was done by MTN and was widely advertised. But let it be said that it was only a trial. And there's no 5G network in Nigeria today as we speak. Because what we did was, together with Nigerian Communications Commission and the Ministry of Communications, Technology and Digital Economy, we conducted those trials in about 3 cities in Nigeria, just to give a flavor about what 5G would be like in terms of speed of delivery and things like that. But let it be said that today Nigeria is still not fully planted with 4G technology all across Nigeria. So that is the focus of many of the telcos today. But I would like to say that, quite honestly, whether we like it or not, we must deploy 5G in the medium to long term from now. Because if we want to be at pace with other countries of the world and not continue to be laggards as we have been in embracing other technologies, we'll also have issues. So, but it has to be led by the regulatory authorities, giving the go-ahead, providing us with the opportunity of acquiring the right spectrum to be able to deploy 5G technology and things of that nature. So it's it's something that will happen. I know that countries like South Africa are also looking at that. They've also done trial runs on 5G.
So you were telling us about the MTN trial in Nigeria, in Lagos and Abuja, and
Yes,
you made the point that it is a trial and that there is absolutely no active 5G network in Nigeria at the moment.
at the moment, that's true. And I also said that I'm aware that in the Republic of South Africa, that they also perform some trials on 5G and maybe one or two other spots around the continent. So in Africa, it's mostly trials. But in Europe, some deployments have started. Of course, in China, in Korea, and the US for that matter. As you know, China seems to be very much ahead of the pack in terms of technology development. And I think also uh, South Korea is also very much advanced in that area. And then the other countries are trying their best. Europe, some countries in Europe, and the US. So it's a big, big issue. It's actually almost going to become a political issue. And one of the worrisome trends in the world is all kinds of conspiracy theories have started coming up about 5G and whether it has anything to do with coronavirus and all that.
COVID-19.
COVID-19. And it was making me very unhappy when some of our citizens were almost in arms against the deployment of 5G. And my word to such people is that with every technology development, there is always this fear about health issues. And that has not stopped the deployment of these networks. And till to date, we've not seen many people dropping dead on the streets because of deployment of these technologies. But all I can assure people is just like flying an aeroplane. If you have faith that the plane will take off and land, then you enter the aeroplane. For 5G technology, to the best of my knowledge, no telecom operator in the world today will ever try to launch a network if they are not certain of the safety of the networks. So that is the truth of the matter. And safety is of paramount importance to all telcos around the world. And myself, as chairman of MTN Nigeria, will never subscribe to any network that will bring hardship or bring a threat to the health of the citizens of the country. So the truth is that 5G will be deployed and with all the necessary health safeguards that are important to make sure that our citizens are protected and that there is nothing untoward that will happen to us.
So,
Thank you.
Dr. Ernest, is this safe? Is it safe to say then that the delay in the rollout of 5G globally, there are pockets of commercial rollout, maybe one or two major commercial rollout, pretty much everywhere else has been testing and test pilot cases. Is it safe to say the delay is as a result of these health concerns? Now, generally, in the long run, almost every wireless infrastructure, long exposure in the long term to almost every wireless infrastructure has some health concerns. And experts like you, uh, in fact, the other time, about 180 scientists and doctors made a presentation to the European Union, making a case about the potential hazards of 5G. And some others will say that having young people and very old people exposed to 5G network over a long period due to the power transmission capabilities of 5G radios could present some potent health issues over a long exposure period. So is that why we are having delays in the rollout? Because the entire industry is trying to find solutions to addressing some of these health concerns before we go full-blown commercial?
No, that is definitely not the case. I would like to remind our viewers about what happened in Europe when it was time to deploy 3G technology. First of all, the cost of deployment is usually of concern to telcos. 3G came about 2 years late because many of the telcos spent so much money buying the 3G spectrum that they did not have money to roll out networks. So it took over 2 years, even in the UK, before the telcos started rolling out 3G, which is the forerunner of 4G. So, first of all, for networks to be deployed, one of the lifeblood of any telecom network is spectrum, frequency spectrum. If the frequency is not there, there will be no deployment. Today, many countries have not even done the auction for 5G spectrum for them to have the spectrum to roll out the network. Only the very advanced countries have gone ahead because of the race for the potential benefits of 5G. They've gone ahead to roll out. For instance, in Africa, no countries have actually given out spectrum for 5G network. And some parts of the world also. So it's not necessarily because of health concerns, no. Let me not sound as if I am supporting rollout of 5G sheepishly. Of course, it will take another year or two before Nigeria will start considering whether we are rolling out 5G or not. But let it be said that 5G is a necessary forward movement for ICT industry in the world today. And that the fear is because of the millimeter wave that is used for 5G deployment. And not all 5Gs will be deployed in the millimeter wave area. And secondly, like I said previously, if it's not safe, nobody will deploy it. If it's not safe, nobody will subject their citizens to the hazards. And quite honestly, it's just work in progress. But to answer your question clearly, it's not because of health issues or health concern. 5G deployment is still work in progress. There are organizations like International Telecoms Union that get involved in setting standards for deployment of technology. They are working hard to make sure that the right protocols are observed and that they issue guidelines on a regular basis, like what WHO has been doing for the COVID-19 era. The issue is that President Trump will not be fighting over supremacy of 5G if the citizens of America will be subjected to death and deprivation. The truth is that it's a technology that is going to improve many aspects of our lives, and that it must be done in a very safe and safety will be the paramount importance as far as deployment of 5G in the future is concerned. And there are regulatory bodies all over the world that will not in any way support any deployment that will result in health hazards to the citizens of that country. And ditto for Nigeria, that if Nigeria does not convince itself that it's safe for deployment in Nigeria, Nigeria will not deploy. And that is the truth of the matter.
Thank you very much again. But before we leave the area of safety and politics, I would take one controversial issue around 5G. As you are aware, a lot of international politics around 5G and issues pertaining to national security. And just like you said, if it's deployed around the millimeter wave, and also the challenges with what some presidents have called the China 5G has not been so safe, and trying to persuade other countries. You know, the UK government received some pressures not to deploy 5G from some other countries. So is this safe? Are there any potential national security issues with relying on some countries or relying on third-party countries to deploy this technology? Because that's some of the arguments we're hearing in the political space. Because you mentioned politics, I said, okay, let's hear your thoughts on this.
Quite honestly, 5G deployment portends a lot of what I call quite honestly, is a money issue as well as politics. As I said in some of my opening remarks, I observed that America has always been the lead in deployment of some of these technologies. America introduced mobile phones to the world. America also introduced internet to the world. But it seems that some other nations have come of age. So in the deployment, in the research and development associated with 5G, for some reason, China went ahead of the pack. And let me say why I say some of it is money matters. According to estimates published in an informal tech research paper, 5G technology could be responsible for 22.3 million jobs and about 13 trillion of global economic output by 2035. So, America does not want to lose out on that potential. So, when they are talking about national security, I'm not too sure. It might be true to a large extent, but I don't know. There is this suspicion between China and the US about issues of spying, issues of the fact that there is a lot of stealing of technology information, and the fact that they are suspecting that since Huawei is taking the lead, I'm sorry to mention the name of the company, since this Chinese company is taking the lead in this 5G deployment, it seems that the powers that be in the Western world are not too comfortable and then start talking about security implications of the technology. This had been flatly denied by these companies in China, but the suspicion persists.
Thank you.
I personally have not researched it to know whether it's true or not. Okay. So, but I think it's more economic than fear of security issues.
Well, you would agree with me that in the final analysis, the economic viability of every country is still a security issue at the end of the day. So let's come back home. Let's come back home to Africa and our ability to roll out 5G. Yes, you said the potential for 5G can be $13 trillion globally, and that today is about 13 times the GDP of Africa. Now, of course, rolling out the network requires a lot of investment. What chunk of this will Africa be positioned to take? And to take it, it means we need to roll out 5G networks or partake at least in 5G networks. So what will it cost to roll out, say, 5G throughout Africa, or perhaps in a capital, in a federal capital like Abuja? What will it cost to just a ballpark figure roll out 5G network? What kind of investment are we talking about?
I'm sorry, I will not be able to give you numbers. Largely because we've not really started doing those sums. We have to walk before we run. The country has to be ready for 5G first before we start talking about estimates of how much it will cost. But let it be said that just like 4G was deployed in Nigeria, 5G will be deployed by the private operating company. So the federal government would not need to worry about the cost of deployment of 5G. The federal government would be more concerned about how much revenue that will bring in terms of revenue from the industry. As you know, ICT today has added about 12% to the GDP of Nigeria only recently. And that is the bottom line that we are talking about. That non-deployment of 5G in future will further widen the digital divide between us and the more advanced countries of the world. Because our lives, I don't think, is more important than the lives of those in the US and in China, places like that. So we have to be careful about how far we go about this issue of saying that we're not going to deploy 5G. If we don't deploy 5G, we will lose out on that $13 trillion of global economic output that is estimated to happen by 2035. We will also be losing out on the 22 million jobs that 5G is likely to create around the world. So the issue here is that it will lead to, I must say, capital flight. It will lead to many of our people, our young people, relocating to other parts of the world, because the world is today a global village. And many of our people might even be here developing 5G kits for global companies like Microsoft, Google, and all that, and doing their own thing and leaving us if we don't want to follow the way the world is going. So it is important that while people talk about 5G, let them leave the experts to look at this thing together with government and the regulatory bodies and make sure that 5G is deployed when it's safe and good to deploy 5G, and when it is not too late for us to join the global race with the rest of the world.
So talking about the concerns for government, at one of our earlier sessions, even today at Digital Africa, one of the concerns that were raised around cost is the cost of delivery of broadband, something you passionately pursued while you were at the helm of regulation in Nigeria. One of our speakers did make the point that overall it costs about 200 to 300 times more in Nigeria to get data for learning as it would in his native country of China. He gave two major reasons that he thinks are responsible for that. One is the number of operators, and then the second is the issue of access. Now, if 5G comes, there is the promise of 5G that it can deliver broadband the way we expect it. But cost and affordability is still an issue. Do you think, sir, that Africa and maybe Nigeria should wait until 5G comes before broadband will become affordable and competitive like the rest of the world, or it will happen in this 4G era?
Thank you for that question, actually, because it's at the root of everything in the ICT industry today. I left NCC about 10 years ago. Before then, during my tenure, we were doing everything possible to convince our political leaders, the governors, about the importance of deploying optic fiber cable massively across the length and breadth of this country. In fact, if you go back to one of my papers around 2007, 2008, I talked about deploying fiber all around Africa, and especially Nigeria. But it was impossible to get permits to deploy these things around. My brother, without optic fiber installation massively across Nigeria, both for metropolitan network in big cities and for interstate networks across the country, we can never enjoy 5G the way other countries are enjoying it today. In India, one company carpeted the whole of India with optic fiber cable. I know during my tenure that a company offered to install without any money from anywhere, install optic fiber cable all around the city of Lagos at their own cost, because they could project ahead and they knew that a time will come as this, where broadband will be the issue and the telcos will need optic fiber cable to be able to deliver broadband services. So it was heartwarming recently when I heard in the news that the Minister of Works, together with some governors, are talking about waiving the right-of-way charges for the next 2 years. Right-of-way charges for installation of fiber. That is, it was like music in my ears. Because with that, all these people saying that is a fraction of what is happening in their country, everything depends on the taxation in your country, how much the state governments charge for you to install fiber across their states. When you charge high right-of-way charges, deployment is slow and you will not get the full benefits of that deployment. So the issue here is that we need to crash the cost of broadband, and it has to start with government. And I must commend the Minister of Communications, Technology and Digital Economy, because he is one of those championing this issue about reducing right-of-way charges so that Nigeria will take its position in the Committee of Nations. If that is done, in the next 2 or 3 years, we won't be saying this thing we're saying. Because the money is there. There are private companies that are ready to start deploying this fiber optic around. Even when you have your tower projecting radio transmission to your cell phone, it must have a fiber to the base station in order for the speed to be good enough for your mobile device. If you still depend on radio, you still have the challenges we're having today. So most telcos are now installing fiber to base stations, all in the way of improving the speed of broadband. Because today we're a mobile country where we depend on portable devices for most of our broadband usage in the country today. So fiber deployment is critical, and I think what government is talking about, the Minister of Digital Communications, Technology and Digital Economy, the Minister of Works, and some progressive governors. In fact, I learned Anambra State, for instance, has waived completely right-of-way charges. So the issue today is, once these are in place, if we start discussing this in 1 year's time, we'll be singing a new song. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndukwe. Absolutely true. A number of governors, I think Ekiti was the first to go public, Anambra, Kwara, Kaduna, and a host of other states in Nigeria followed suit with either complete eradication or a major, massive, significant reduction of the right-of-way.
Major reduction, very true.
Yes. So absolutely relevant. But you're talking about the role of the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, and the dynamics of investment of 5G network and network generally is changing. Would you want to advise the government, regulator, and the policy at the minister and presidential level to consider allowing roaming on 5G network, considering the cost implication, considering the fact that we now need a network that is truly easy and available for people to use? Would you want them to consider open network services for 5G, inter-network roaming for data services?
Quite honestly, anything is possible provided you carry the industry along with you. You're very right that the cost of deployment of 5G would be enormous because you need many more base stations than what we have today. In fact, by the order of 10 times. So it will require a lot of investment. And suggestions of that nature might be a way to go. All these are things that the regulator and the policymakers would get involved with the private operators, like I always did when I was a regulator. You go and have open discussion and consultation with the industry. And then everybody will be aligned and they'll come up with exactly what is best for the industry. So that is definitely a possibility.
Great, great. Okay, so Doctor, before we leave the industry and players, you talked about the many benefits of 5G. We know almost everything smart people say today would benefit significantly from 5G network. Smart learning, smart health, smart living, smart building, and so on. So the challenge and question, Dr. Ndukwe, I can still see and hear you clearly. Can you hear me?
I'm listening.
Okay, great. So the question for the Nigerian and African tech entrepreneurs, especially those who play in the telco value chain. We have the big operators who clearly would participate in rolling out the network. But what aspect of the value chain going forward would you want to challenge young entrepreneurs and small to medium-sized companies in that space to focus on and take advantage of? As you know, it's a tough call to ask a startup company to take on MTN, which you chair.
You're very correct. Companies like MTN employ the services of hundreds of small companies all over. You'll be surprised that value-added services providers at one time, some of them were netting turnovers of 5 billion a year and things like that. So even in the installation of 5G today, you will have things like base station installations, radio network installations, and the like. And let me say that when people do research and development, they'll come with some good thing that they can come up with that might be of interest to the large operators. Or they might come up with a technology that will make large operators redundant after a while. Technology just moves on. Nobody can predict what will happen in the next 5 years. You know, so the truth of the matter is that there are hundreds of companies. They might not be that visible to everyone, but there are many, many companies that are making very good business of their own, you know, doing wonderful things in the ICT industry today. Even when you see the big 4 or big 5 companies in the country, it's the same thing all over the world. In the US, you hear about AT&T, you hear about this other company or the other. In the UK, it's the major companies you hear about. But under them, there are many technology companies that are providing vital services. We do a lot of work in the ICT area. even in the MTN. And many technology companies are involved in that. So people just have to do their own homework and find where they'll fit in the value chain to be able to deliver services both for themselves and for the big companies that are playing at this time.
Now, talking about research, Dr. Ndukwe, and what people need to do for young people, are there, you've alluded to some, okay? So let me acknowledge first that you've alluded to the fact that young people might want to consider skills in maths, value-added services, and those kind of areas. But for a lot of young people still, I would like you to then address this question specifically. What skills do young people need to begin to acquire that will make them relevant in the 5G era, and then also relevant to themselves as potential entrepreneur or people who can start up the real big next idea for the 5G network, or like you said, make the big telco players redundant in future, who knows?
The first thing is that the person must be sufficiently IT savvy. I might not be able to mention all the skills, but these days there are various companies in Nigeria that are seriously involved in developing IT skills. There are companies like Andela that are doing some good things in developing ICT manpower and even feeding countries outside Nigeria, not just for consumption of companies within the Nigerian space. Everything that we use today, even for switches and for software, everything, very relevant IT skills are very important. Of course, people need to be able to be very comfortable with the various new technologies in the area. You have to know, today people even start learning how to code from a very young age. And the reason is that that is where the world is going. People need to know how to build softwares. People need to know how to develop apps. All the languages that are involved in those developments. Anybody seeking to know what to do, the information is out there in the open. I think all they need to do is open up their laptops or cell phone and do some research about the trending technologies of today. And I must warn that these technologies change almost on a daily basis. When I was in the university in the 70s, the computer that we had in those days always filled a hole, almost a hall. And those computers were doing, some of them not as much as the regular mobile phone is doing today. So technologies are continuously evolving. The language in those days was Fortran 4, Fortran this. Today, there are many more modern languages that are coming up. And that makes some of us look as if we didn't go to school again. So the issue here is that people have to absorb. And if you look at many companies today, they're actually employing teenagers and very young people to crack some of these technology issues and build softwares and even do ethical hacking and things like that. That is what is happening in many organizations today. So it's a, let me say, it's an era for young people. The younger you are and trained, the easier for you to be able to adapt to new technology. And I must also warn that today it doesn't matter the profession you are in. You need to have some basic knowledge of ICT. We call young people ICT natives because they can use their devices and do wonderful things that many older people cannot do. So I know many of these young people you're talking about know more of these technologies than myself in terms of what the right technologies are in use today in the various technology. And there are many organizations that are offering courses in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ndukwe. We're moving on to the last part of our chat. I'd like to take your predictions at this point. We've looked at the 5G network, what it will take, what the challenges are, and the promise that it's not a function of if. 5G in Africa, it's about when, not if. So I'd like to then ask you, which country and when do you see the first major commercial rollout in Africa for 5G? And who will be the operator that will get it done? Your prediction.
In Africa, you mean?
In Africa, yes. So when will it happen?
Quite honestly,
and who will be the operator we should be looking to get it done?
As you know, MTN operates in about 19 countries in Africa and counting. MTN is very active in South Africa. MTN is also active in Ghana. MTN is also very active in Cote d'Ivoire and a number of West African countries. So also a few other operators like Airtel and the like. The truth of the matter is that the country that will brace the tape first will be the country that the regulatory bodies become most prepared to open the window or the doors for 5G to enter. And I wouldn't want us to be laggards in Nigeria. One of the pains that I had when I assumed office, in fact, before I assumed office as EVC of NCC, was that a country like Cameroon rolled out GSM before Nigeria. Countries like Tunisia and North Africa did their auction for 2G before Nigeria. And I suspect even Ghana. So everything would depend on government policy and government regulatory decisions, that if other countries, not to talk of South Africa started GSM almost a decade before Nigeria. So, and they are in the race today, just like in the race in the advanced countries. We also have an African race today. And South Africa is not playing. They're actually looking at rollout very fast in the future. So my guess is that it will either be South Africa, Nigeria, or Ghana will be the first to roll out. Take example, for instance, we are still talking about mobile money today. Nigeria remains one of the countries that has not embraced it because of regulatory restrictions. Kenya did it. Ghana did it 10 years ago. Kenya did it ages ago. It depends on the regulatory environment that we operate in. Once we set our people free, once we embrace changes that are necessary, things will go very fast. And that is the truth of the matter.
Okay, Doctor, let's still focus on your home country, Nigeria. And I know we're discussing Pan-Africa. You mentioned countries. You didn't say which operator. I would leave that. I would assume that you would not mention any other operator but MTN that will do it in those countries. So we just take that as a given. That would be your response.
That's why I told you MTN. I told
so
you
we'll
MTN is in 19 countries of the world.
Oh, well, okay,
19
so we'll take
countries
that
in Africa.
and counting still. Okay, so we'll just take that as your response. But what would you like to see as a former regulator? What would you like to see if there is one actionable thing you would like regulators to do as a matter of urgency? What would it be? The regulator of Nigeria, for example, and the policymaker, if there is an action you would like to see taken in order to move 5G forward now, what would you like to see?
I'd like to mention 2 or 3 things, but the one that I mentioned before, which is eliminating right-of-way charges across the country, because 5G cannot thrive without optic fiber cable. So if we don't do the general planting of optic fiber cable around the country, because 5G is radio, but a link is as strong as its weakest link. Once we don't have that high capacity infrastructure that is represented by optic fiber cable, 5G will just be a mirage as far as I'm concerned. So it is important to embrace, to do that removal of subsidy. And the minister, like I said, has been championing that removal of right of way, not subsidy, I'm sorry. The minister and some of other ministers and governors are championing that because I think they are forward looking. Number 2 is that the regulator must, as at today, start thinking of the spectrum that 5G will require and start looking at giving out the spectrum as soon as possible so that people can start planning ahead of time. And then thirdly, it's also a step that the minister and people in the industry have taken, which is the broadband plan that was recently launched. The implementation of that broadband plan is critical.
Hmm. Hmm. Dr. Ndukwe, we have just about 2 minutes to go, but I would just like to bring it to your attention that our viewers, at least one Olushola particularly, Teniola, is making the case that we should watch out for Vodacom. Perhaps they will beat MTN to the race for 5G, because it's pointing at what they are doing in Lesotho, or what they did in Lesotho in 2008, and what they are doing in South Africa and so on. So I'm just telling you so that your board is hereby notified that Vodacom that the race to the tape is on, and Vodacom might just beat you to it. But before you leave, I would like to ask you. You're up for the challenge, isn't it? So before you leave, I'd just like to ask you a question. Exactly, a question that was given to me that I should ask you by my colleagues. You've been a practitioner, you've been a regulator, you've been on the business side, now you sit on the board of an operator. So you've been almost on all sides, which is rare. Perhaps the only part you haven't been, which you tried, is to get on the executive side of government or legislative side via political election. So maybe you should give that a shot one more time. But so far, I haven't been in so many capacity going around the telecom space. Which of these position or areas do you like best? Where would you rather want to be on a long-term basis?
I must confess, before I got the position at NCC, I used to argue in various speeches I made. I was the managing director of a GEC company, GEC Telecom Nigeria. I had been MD for 11 years before I moved on to the NCC as the chief executive. I guess this background I've given is to point to the fact that I think the most impactful years of my life have been my sojourn in the Nigerian Communications Commission. I was privileged at the time I joined that the country was yearning for a revolution of sort. And with me and my colleagues on the board and the staff of the commission, we went ahead to work and delivered what has been generally described as Nigeria's telecom revolution era. So as far as I'm concerned, that has been the most enjoyable part of my life in terms of my working life. And when you're in a company, you work to please your shareholders. When you're working for government, the decisions you take has a big impact on the whole country, on the whole population of a country. So the responsibility on your shoulders, very heavy. So it's not something to be toyed with. And that's why after my sojourn in NCC, I've always advised young people who are interested in politics to start early, those who have genuine intentions, because you might be one of those that will transform this country, because politics is where judges are appointed, ministers are appointed, legislators are appointed, and the like. Regulators are appointed. So it's very important that well-meaning people who have integrity and who are anxious to see this country move to a first world should be thinking of being part of the political process from a very young age. Because when you go out, Obama started very early. Many of the politicians in the US started in their 20s and they grew in the rank. Not people who wake up one day and just join and they are already not sure of what they're doing or where they're going. So the issue here, and it's one of my pet projects, to see how we can actually organize forum where young people can be trained or encouraged to join the political system, because that is where politics is not a game, it's actually a profession that people should be proud of if they do it properly. Thank you very much.
On that note, we would like to end this fireside chat with Dr. Ernest Ndukwe, OFR. It's been my greatest pleasure and honor to have this conversation with you. There is so much you have said. We run out of time. I will not be doing a recap, but viewers should know that you can always go back to the Digital Africa website and all the social media handles. All these conversations will be shared and people can view them. And Dr. Ernest has promised to be back with us on a session where we'll be anchoring and working with young people to motivate them to join politics early, to understand this journey, and to carry the weight of Africa on their shoulders and carry it well. Thank you very much. It's been a privilege, and thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure being with you today. And thank you, listeners, everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.